Good morning. Welcome to our policy primer. It is still morning. We're very glad to have you join us for our policy primer on what's really happening on the border. And I am as eager as you are to hear about what our panelists have to say about what's really happening on the border. But thank you for joining us. Our moderator for this very interesting primer is Agriculture Commissioner Todd Staples. Commissioner Staples has been involved in public service since 1989 as a city councilman, and then in 1995, and the reason I know that is because he and I came to the Texas House at the same time. He came to the Texas State House and then was subsequently elected to the Texas Senate, and then as our Ag Commissioner. He has served our state very well. He has focused on trade and business issues during his career with an emphasis on taxpayer interest. Commissioner Staples, Todd, is an Aggie, received his degree in agricultural economics at Texas A&M.
Game day is Thursday, tomorrow at 5 p.m. in Virginia Down.
And our president and CEO, Brooke Rollins, is on her way right now to watch the game, to cheer the Aggies on. Todd and his wife Janet have 4 grown children, and he has done a great deal of work already on border issues, not the least of which is his book, Broken Borders, Broken Promises. So we're delighted to have Commissioner Staples with us moderating today, and I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's why Brooke is president of TPPF and I'm a recovering politician. She knows how to manage time much better than I do. If she's going to South Carolina for the game, I'm very envious. But I'm excited to be here with all of you today to talk about, I guess, probably one of the thorniest and toughest public policy issues of our day. I mean, we have the national debt, we have presidential tea times, and then we have border security. And today we know that there is a plethora of perspectives about what's really happening on the Texas border. I think today you're in for a real treat because you are going to hear from the national leading experts who can give you firsthand information on their perspective, what they have seen, what they have encountered, what they have heard. We have law enforcement represented today. We have Texas landowner represented today. And we have a national media expert who has been a driving force in creating national headlines about what's happening on the Texas-Mexico border. So it's very exciting. Now, when we talk about the Texas-Mexico border, I want to be very clear. The border between Texas and Mexico represents a very dynamic economy. Mexico is the #1 trading partner for the state of Texas in legal trade, adding up to billions of dollars every year. Almost 200 billion, representing over 500,000 jobs based on the exports to Mexico. So we have a very dynamic trading partner. The growth in business activity along our southern border in South Texas, many friends I see here today from the South Texas area on the Rio Grande Valley area. You know it's a bustling economy, a lot of growth, a lot of good things happening. Texas represents 64% of our entire national southern border. While the Mexican economy has been very healthy over the last few years, there's a very dangerous and destructive force that is occurring in Mexico. The drug wars in Mexico, no reference to the United States here, just talking about Mexico, the drug wars have accounted for an estimated 125,000 deaths from 2006 to 2012, according to the Trans-Border Institute. These death statistics, unfortunately, are very comparable to the annual death statistics that occurred in the height of the Iraq War, to put it in perspective of just really what's happening. The level of corruption among local law enforcement and public officials in Mexico is widespread and reported on almost a daily basis. My involvement in this issue began about 4 years ago when landowners reached out to me who had their pleas ignored by our national leaders when they were asking for help. Now, some in our nation are under the opinion that what is happening in Mexico is obviously having no impact on the level of security of here in the United States. And if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. In March of 2011, then Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano said, speaking on border security issues, the border is better now than it ever has been. In May of 2011, our president was giving a speech in El Paso, Texas, and made jokes about proponents that were asking for more border security, when he said, maybe they'll need a moat. Maybe they'll want alligators in the moat. This July 2014, your United States Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid said at a press conference at the United States Capitol, the border is secure. That's a month ago when that occurred. Here in Texas, the McAllen Monitor reported in September 2012 on the situation, and one of the biggest critics they state, it turns out, is Hidalgo County Sheriff Lupe Trevino, who reported that his border county last year had its second lowest crime rate in 15 years. Sheriff Trevino's direct quote was this: to say the farmers and ranchers have been victimized personally, other than trespassing, have been assaulted, threatened. Trevino said, I don't have statistics to support those allegations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, the now former Sheriff Trevino was recently sentenced by a federal district judge to 5 years in federal prison and fined $60,000 after admitting in April to taking between $70,000 and $120,000. Who believes that was the real dollar amount here today, by the way? And illegal campaign money from a known drug trafficker. Just this morning, in the San Antonio Express News, Hidalgo County Judge Ramon Garcia said this in regard to the deployment of National Guard troops by Governor Perry. I've always been against it, especially now. That laugh was mine, not his. There's no public safety crisis. The only difference between what's going on now and all the other years Perry has been governor is the women and children. Now, I think our experts today will be very enlightening on what they have to share with you. We have some documents here along the wall. This is Operation Drawbridge, a DPS initiative. These are game cameras on private lands and strategic areas on the Texas-Mexico border. Operation Drawbridge, in a couple-of-year period, has been responsible. Game cameras, the kind that hunters like me are going to be out in the woods and looking at here shortly, equipped with cameras and cell phones, over 46,000 apprehensions and 72 tons of narcotics. Simple technology, but a will from Texas to make good things happen. This occurred on a ranch in South Texas, a bullet-ridden vehicle. You can see the apprehensions in Texas over the last 3 years have increased almost 100%. These are apprehensions of everyone, not just unaccompanied alien children. And then you can see the border agent disparity between the other states and what we have here in Texas. So I'm excited today to have this panel. Speaker here to my right is Brandon Darby, the Managing Director of Breitbart, Texas. Brandon has international recognition for his work. He has been a real leader in public awareness of informing the American people about what's really going on. He has received notoriety across the globe for his role as an operative with the FBI on the Informant and Human Sources Program. He has worked with the FBI on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We're real excited to have you today. Let's give a round of applause for Brandon Darby. Next, we have Shawn Moran. Shawn is the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Shawn has actually worn the uniform, worn the badge, and we appreciate your service. We thank you for being a spokesperson and directly involved in border issues for the past 17 years. Now, Brandon's home is San Diego, and the only thing bad about San Diego is it's in California. Other than that, it's a great city. Well, a lot of good things happening, and we certainly appreciate you being here today and your leadership and raising the awareness. And on the end there is my friend, Dr. Mike Vickers, a fellow Texas Aggie, a veterinarian and landowner in South Texas. He also serves all of us on the Texas Animal Health Commission, a very important role that works with ranchers and producers that's responsible for billions of dollars of activity here in our state. Dr. Vickers is also chairman of the Texas Border Volunteers, a group of about 300 landowners and supporters who work with Border Patrol, local law enforcement to help monitor what's going on, and I'll let him tell his story about that. The best thing about Dr. Vickers is his wife, Linda, who serves as Chief of Staff for the Texas Border Volunteers. And all of the panelists know we're going to have about 10 minutes from each of them. I want to remind my friend Dr. Vickers, 10 minutes one more time. He's very passionate about this, as you will tell. We have an official scorekeeper, timekeeper up here to keep us all on track. So we'll stay on task, and then we're going to answer questions. We want to hear from you. We want to know what your questions are, because today is the day to firmly establish what is happening on the Texas border. Shawn, won't you lead us off here? We appreciate you being here. Let's give him another round of applause.
Always been told that a great speech has a rousing beginning, a stunning ending, and not much in between. So I'm going to try and keep it short and save time for the question and answer. I think that's when the information that you're looking for will come through. I just want to thank the Texas Public Policy Foundation for having me here. My previous experience with Texas has been the Rio Grande Valley, Laredo, El Paso, Marfa, so I don't really get very far north, so this is my first time at the Capitol. And I work with a lot of people from Texas. A lot of Border Patrol agents are from Texas. And being from New Jersey, going to school in the Northeast, and then coming to California, I always wondered, what was it about Texas? And they could never really put their finger on, but I got to experience some of that last night and today. Brandon took me to dinner and tried to kill me with a dessert of tres leches that was about the size of my head. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, why did I keep eating that? But then I got to experience this morning when I came into the Capitol, and I am still an active federal agent. I don't get to wear the uniform every day, unfortunately, but I still have my badge in my pocket, I have my gun, and I walked into the state capitol of Texas, and one of the Texas Rangers looked at my credentials and said, okay. That doesn't happen in California. That doesn't happen in any other state. I can go in, I can be on duty and go into a courthouse and I have to lock up my firearm. It happens at the U.S. Capitol, so I was thoroughly impressed, and so that is definitely one in the pro column for Texas. The reason I'm here, though, I am a Border Patrol agent. I have the honor, and it is a great honor to me. I've been raised to want to serve my country. And I have found a home in the U.S. Border Patrol, and other than being a father and a husband, it is the greatest honor that's ever been bestowed upon me. I get to represent 17,000 non-supervisory Border Patrol agents who are out there risking their lives every day. And one of the tasks that I also have personally, this isn't an organizational one, but it's keeping the memory of the 120 agents that have died in the line of duty alive. And unfortunately, recently we had one that was not considered line of duty, but we are fighting for him. We are fighting for his family. Border Patrol agent Javier Vega was murdered in Willacy County, defending his family. His mother and father fought back, and 2 illegal aliens that were in this country are now in custody and will be facing capital murder charges here in Texas. We won't have to fight with the Republic of Mexico to get them back here, only to face a life sentence. So we won't forget him. I hope that you won't forget Agent Vega, and you'll support us in the fight to get his death considered a line of duty death. It's very important to our membership, and I think it just shows that the border is not secure. And it doesn't matter what state you're talking about, whether it's California or Texas or the northern border. Right now, something that still boggles my mind, since the beginning of the federal government sequestration, nationwide, we do not have 100% staffing for Border Patrol agents. We have a congressional mandated floor of 21,370 agents that need to be maintained. We're doing that. But because we hired so many agents, because we raised their base pay several years ago, Congress has never allocated enough money to maintain that going forward, and our agency has not budgeted for that. It's a very convoluted and complicated system. I won't get into the pay system specifically, but when we have a crisis, as we do in the Rio Grande Valley, where tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people are forecasted to come into this country to try and exploit our immigration laws, common sense would dictate that the first step you would take to combat that crisis would be to put the people whose primary job is to combat that, and that's Border Patrol agents. So it strikes me as disingenuous, to be kind, that the federal government has not put the full staffing of Border Patrol agents in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and the soft underbelly of our national security, the northern border and the coastal borders. If terrorists really wanted to get here, they could. I'm not going to stand up here and say that our agents are the end-all, be-all, or that a border fence is the solution to stopping illegal immigration. It's not. We're not. But we are the only people out there that have the federal authority to do this job. So we need to get our full staffing back to 100% and make sure that that border is protected. I'll be happy to go into more of that if anybody has questions about what we feel the solution is and the path forward. Happy to do that, but I want to save some more time for the Q&A. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you for having me here, and talk more in a few minutes. Thank you.
Dr. Mike Vickers. He gets 2 minutes. He gets 10 minutes to walk up there. And then
Howdy, he's got a point there. I really messed my knee up here a couple of days ago. But anyway, I'll give you a little brief overview of our Texas Border Volunteers. My profession, besides being a rancher, is a veterinarian. I've been a veterinarian for 41 years, class of 72 graduate. About 30 years ago, I realized we had a severe problem. I have probably 300 ranch accounts spread out across 16 counties along the border. I've done a lot of work in Mexico. I probably have 20 to 30 Mexican ranchers that I consult for. I used to go over there prior to 2010. I do a lot of export work, and as the commissioner said, Mexico is a big, big trading partner of ours. I'm doing a big Mexican export next week. About 20 different deer breeders, pen-raised deer breeders here in Texas. We're going to send a shipment this next week. And I actually work for 2 Mexican exporters. I go all over the state handling all this export work, from cattle, horses. Just recently sent some camels to the Monterey Zoo and these white-tailed deer, everything. So they're a big trading partner. I'm here to tell you right now that the cartels control 100% of the waterfront property from Brownsville to El Paso, Texas, about 1,264 miles. And they also control a significant portion of our own Texas border. And that's not by occupation, it's by intimidation. I can tell you I have clients in Webb County, Zapata County, Starr County, and yes, Hidalgo County, where they will not call law enforcement, will not call the Border Patrol when they see backpackers on their ranch loading up a truck on their own property, or if they see illegal aliens, and some of them who have called have actually gotten a call the next day. You call the Border Patrol again, we're going to come kill you. And a few years ago, I had to meet a guy, his family was out of town. He was north of San Ignacio a little bit, which is in Zapata County. And I had to meet him at the ranch. He had been in Laredo, but he was headed home. His family was out of town. I think one of his daughters was fixing to enroll in St. Mary's in San Antonio. And I met him at the ranch. His gate was locked, and we went through the gate, pulled up to his beautiful stucco home, had a big show window. It had graffiti written all over the home with spray cans, "Don't come back." Out there in the front yard was a television set that they had thrown out. They had completely ransacked his house. This guy fell down and started crying. He said, I just can't take it anymore. And they ended up moving to Laredo. This is what I've seen. And you know, the president, the commissioner mentioned that he was in El Paso a couple of years ago. I actually got the Border Patrol statistics for that 5-day period when he made that statement about how secure the border was. That 5-day period, over 5,000 people had been apprehended between Brownsville and El Paso from 35 different countries, 1,500 in the El Paso sector. And I can't remember how many tons of dope. So the message is not right. We're under siege. And back to when I decided to try to do something about it, and some of my landowners, we knew we had to do something. So we started our Texas Border Volunteers about 9 years ago. And a little bit prior to that, we identified hundreds of smuggling trails on private property between Laredo and the coast. And this is what we do. We watch these smuggling trails every month. We aligned ourselves with law enforcement, in particular the Border Patrol, Texas Rangers, DPS, and our local law enforcement. And we've been well received. Our motto is to support law enforcement, and this is what we've been doing for years. We go out on all this private property, we camo up, we have a strict operating protocol, and when we see the perpetrators, either human smugglers or drug smugglers, our first call is to the Border Patrol. Our second call is to the DPS hangars for air support. We've been well received. We have helped the Border Patrol apprehend thousands of people sneaking into the country illegally. And we've also saved hundreds of people's lives. And we find a lot of dead people. Right now, since January 2012 to today, just within 15 or 20 minutes of my ranch, which is our operating headquarters, we found almost 270 bodies, approaching 270 bodies on private property. These are all homicides. All these people are contributing to organized crime by paying a huge sum of money to be brought into this country, paying the cartels and the gang members that work for them to be brought into this country illegally. They don't walk 69 miles from the river up to my front gate. They're being paid to be dropped off south of that checkpoint, 4.5 miles south of my gate. And these coyotes are ruthless. They take their money, and then they'll walk off and leave them, and they'll point at a tower over there close to Falfurrias, which is 10 miles north, and say, that's Houston. All you have, it's about a 20-minute walk. And these people get out there, they don't have enough water, they're bogging down in the sand, they get cramped up, and the coyotes beat on them a little bit, threaten them, and then they go down, they walk off and leave. I want to try to...
If you can take a minute to wrap up, and then if you don't get through all that, we'll do that in the Q&A for sure.
Some of the things that we encountered, just last year, we had a group of 10 come out of a big ranch. We followed them, we called the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol didn't respond quick enough. We told them exactly where they were probably going to come out on the highway. And when they went over the fence, one of them dropped this out of his pocket. This is an Urdu dictionary. Urdu is spoken in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and no question it belonged to the coyote. It's got phrases in there that say, you must pay $1. Do you speak English? Do you speak Spanish? During our June-off, there was a bailout in the area of our operation. In the back seat was a pouch that was full of Iranian money. And we've had another Iranian money situation since then. And then a few weeks ago, 4 Syrians were apprehended coming into our country down the river from where all the kids and the people are giving up. One thing that's very, very positive, these DPS surge operations really work. They have given relief to the people along the border because it is shutting down some of the traffic. And the fact that the National Guard is going to be coming in, and I think they're already in Rio Grande City, that's another big plus. Even if they're described as scarecrows out there, like Sheriff Guerra described them in a recent interview, a scarecrow with a thermal and a telephone or a radio system can be a force multiplier. So I know I'm getting down close to the end, but I've got a lot of pictures up here, a lot of the people that we find dead. The nationalities, there's a huge concern for Ebola. We encountered a lot of Africans. There were Nigerians and Kenyans apprehended in the McAllen sector this year. This is a year trend. We see Somalians, Sudanese. Africa's here. They're coming from all over the world.
We'll get to them on Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Let's give a round of applause. Pass these around if you guys will do that for us. Brandon Darby. Thank you.
Hey folks, how y'all doing?
Good.
You know, it's kind of funny. I've become very good friends with Shawn Moran, and I told him he was welcome in Texas. I asked him to come here, and he came today to the Capitol with all of his luggage. And I think he might have taken that too literally. I don't know. I guess he had to check out, to be honest. But you know, guys, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate the group that has us. I appreciate TPPF, and I appreciate the panel. I've had some unique experiences over the last year and a half, 2 years. I've spent the majority, any of you who know me, and a few of you do, I have a little girl, she's 6 years old in Lubbock, Texas, named Olivia. And I have every other weekend with Olivia. And pretty much any time that I haven't been with Olivia in the last year and a half, or traveling for whatever reason, I've been on the border. And I've been on the border all the way from Boca Chica Beach, all the way from the Gulf of Mexico, and all the way to San Diego. The only part of the border that I haven't set my feet on is the majority of the Big Bend sector in Texas. As many of you might know, there's 5 sectors in Texas. There's the Rio Grande Valley sector, which represents roughly 25.6 or 0.7% of the Texas border. After that, you have the Laredo sector, then the Del Rio. You go on from there and you end up in El Paso, which goes all the way through New Mexico. And then you have the Tucson sector, and you keep going and you end up in the San Diego sector. And I've spent time in all of those sectors. I've spent time in the communities. I've spent time with the Border Patrol agents, with the Border Patrol Agents Union. I'm not a big union guy, but I love that union. If it weren't for that union, I'm gonna tell you something, if it weren't for that union, we would have no way to know what was really going on. Those photos that got released, and it wasn't the union, but I'll tell you what, if it weren't for an agent, you know, having the courage to risk their pensions, to risk, I mean, they took some chances putting those photos out to us. And if it weren't for an agent and a few other guys, we wouldn't have had those photos, and we probably wouldn't be talking about this right now. And I don't mean to be ugly, but I don't know that Rick Perry would be talking about it right now. And that's just a fact. That's what really kicked it off. It wasn't us who kicked it off. It was agents having the courage. It was agents in the union, and it wasn't this guy, don't worry, but it was some in the union from another sector who, most of the issues we're talking about today in the media that we now know about, that came from the Border Patrol union, came from agents in the union. We would have no way to know it. Can you imagine if the FBI agents had a union like that? Nobody would know. So here's the situation. I find myself in a pickle because I don't like to attack people. There's been a couple of politicians, some of you may have noticed, that I have gone after, but I generally don't. We talk about issues, mostly. And the company as a whole does, but as Breitbart Texas, we generally don't go after people. But the problem I have is that over the last year and a half, I built this bond with so many different agents and so many different people in communities and so many different law enforcement agents, officers on the border. And so much of what I hear right now being discussed in the media is a bunch of bull. It's not true. It's unfair. And like, it's true to say we're securing the border by sending these troops to the border. That's a fair statement. But they don't mention they're only sending them to 25.6% of the border. What about the guys in the Laredo sector? What about Hector Garza? We took some grassroots leaders. We got so frustrated. I said, guys, you got to come see it. And they're like, isn't this great? He's doing this. And I said, I like the guy too. I have the same man crush. But wait a minute. This isn't fair. And so I got a van together, and I got 12 grassroots leaders, and we drove to the Laredo sector, and I walked them through every little dirty secret I found or agents had told me about that sector, and I walked them over the course of several days, and I showed them everything that was wrong. And so what we're being told that we're on the way to having a more secure border, and I don't think that that's true, people. That's not what I have experienced in the last year and a half of my life. It's not what I've experienced at all. I know of a situation, I know of a reality where there are sensors and there are aerostats and there are all kinds of fancy cameras and gizmos to let agents know whenever people are crossing that border illegally. I also know that there are a number of times, maybe 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 out of 4, in some areas, like in the Laredo sector, where every time someone comes across doesn't mean agents can respond because there's not enough agents to respond. Now I'm going to ask you something. If you send 1,000 National Guardsmen to the Rio Grande Valley sector, and all they can do is say, hey, Border Patrol, and they can act as human cameras, human sensors, and there's not enough agents to respond, what are you going to do? What good have you done? You haven't done much good. So I'm very critical of that. And like I said, in the last year and a half, the relationships I've built and the things we know, the information we've released on Breitbart, Texas. We released the information from 2009 through current day, through a month and a half ago, of all of the numbers of people who have illegally come to the United States in the entire world. It was 75 countries have people coming into our country illegally. You know, and there's things that are concerning. For instance, we have a lot of Chinese people who illegally cross into Texas and into the U.S. across the southwest border. Now here's the deal. If you look at when China started cracking down on Islamic militants and putting them in prison and chopping heads off, which I'm not saying I'm in favor of them chopping people's heads off, but if you look at their crackdown and then you look at when our numbers of people from China started increasing, they've gone up substantially. That's a concern to me. The Ebola stuff, do I think we have Ebola? No, I don't think we have Ebola. Do I think that that's a risk? I do think that's a risk. I'll tell you why. Because we released the numbers from people from Liberia and the other 2 nations who are heavily affected by the Ebola outbreak, and maybe more as of today. And we have people coming across our border illegally. If you look at the math, the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime put out a report in 2013, and they said, listen, it was an 80-something page report, and of course all the data that interested me was buried somewhere in the middle of it. You had to kind of put it together in a strange way and figure it all out. But they said people are coming from the Horn of Africa, from Yemen, from the Middle East, and they come through the Horn of Africa, through Somalia. It costs them roughly $7,500 to get from Yemen through the Horn of Africa into Central America and Mexico. And then they take the same smuggling routes that people from Central America and Mexico take. Do I think that a child from Mexico or Central America is a threat to my country? Of course not. Does it break my heart that we have this children's crisis? Of course it does. Of course it does. But here's the problem. The children's crisis is a part of the larger crisis that we are suffering through. They say, well, Obama's deported more people than any other president. No, he hasn't. That's a bold-faced lie. That is a lie. What he has done is he has taken the voluntary, what they call voluntary deportations, voluntary returns, and he has begun to add those numbers into the numbers of deportations, which no other president has done. You know, in the state of Texas, we released an ICE report. They have deported over 7,000 convicted sex offenders in a 3-year period in the state, from the state of Texas alone. How many of you knew that? Does that concern anyone? Does that bother? No one's raising a hand. What's up? Okay. How about this? Does that not concern anyone? Is anyone in here not concerned by that? This is the problems that we're facing, people. You know, sometimes we're called nativists, and if anyone knows me, I'm not a nativist at all. If anyone knows me, I'm someone who believes, and I know it's controversial to say, but I want to see that border locked down, but I want to see the lanes to get in legally widened, right? I'm all about immigration. I'm not in favor of illegal immigration. There's a difference. But I'm called a nativist because I report every time somebody commits a crime who's here illegally, a federal crime, a heinous crime. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last year and a half reporting to every crime, and I know I have 1 minute, yeah, I got it. That 1 minute though is a Vickers minute. Dr. Vickers minute. You set the standard. It's an honor to follow in your footsteps. Right? One of the things I've noticed covering these crimes, I started to notice these really weird trends. First off, when the U.S. Attorney's Office puts out a press release, it'll say, Seattle man convicted in large meth bust or whatever. And I'm like, Seattle man. So I started, every time I saw the word meth, right, large meth, I started pulling up the records from Pacer and getting the court records. And almost every time there's a bust in this country with more than 100 pounds of methamphetamine, it's a Mexican national. Almost every time. You think I'm lying? Check it out yourself. Almost every time. And when the court goes through the proceedings, what happens is a man who's a Mexican national gets 40 years, and then a bunch of U.S. citizens get 2 and 3 years. And now some of you would say, well, that's a racial disparity, and that's not what it is. I thought that at first too. But what it is Mexican nationals are being dispatched from cartels, right? They're sending their own people, and they're hiring U.S. citizens to run their large methamphetamine operations across the country. If you go into Seattle, if you go to the Northwest or to the Bakken region of South Dakota, you're going to find that it's the Sinaloa cartel. If you go to Alabama or Georgia or the other southern states, you're going to find that it's usually a cartel from Guatemala. It's usually a Guatemalan national. These are the trends you start to see. And every time you see it, they never say like, hey, it's so-and-so national. They always say, Alabama man caught with $6 million and 300 pounds of methamphetamine. I find that to be kind of concerning. That's what we're dealing with. So we're going to report on that. And we're going to see those trends, and we're going to make sure, you know, I know right now everybody's on a big, exciting kick to talk about the border, and I know everybody's upset that some of our leaders seem to be, and I do believe they are, under fire for political reasons and indicted for political reasons. I believe that. I get that 100%. But there is no way, and I'll close on this, and she's going, oh my gosh. I'm still in my Vickers minute. There is no way in the world that my desire to support a conservative political candidate or to get along with my readers is going to outweigh the commitment that I have to the men and women of law enforcement on that border. It ain't going to happen. It is not going to happen. I suggest to everyone that they go to Breitbart Texas Daily, of course, 50 times a day. Click on it. 50 from different computers. Right? But I suggest you go, and I suggest you look around. I suggest you look at the projects we've done to honor the slain Border Patrol agents. You know, I spent about 6 hours trying to get to where Brian Terry was killed, and I finally found it because I didn't know how to use a GPS unit. And that's why it took me 6 hours to walk 3 miles. It was mountainous, whatever. But I suggest you look at what we did for Robert Rosas Jr., who was killed when 5 Mexican nationals crossed the border in California, and they lured him. They set off a sensor, and they lured and trapped him, and they killed him, and they took his night vision equipment. That's why they killed him. And the border's still wide open right there. They have an agent assigned close by now. But Shawn Moran had the kindness to take me to where Robert Rosas was killed. And when I went to where he was killed, there's this 12-foot cross, roughly 12 foot, right? Yeah. There's a 12-foot cross. And when you look at the cross, there was this laminated sheet of paper on it, right? And it was blowing in the wind. It was very, very windy. It's kind of creepy out there because you're maybe from here to that door away from the actual border, and it's just a little metal fence, like looks like a junkyard fence, right? Sheet metal fence. And when I straightened out that piece of laminated paper, it said, "We love you, Papa." And there was a picture, there's a picture of him holding his baby. So that's why we do what we do. On that note, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Thank you.
We've got, I've got one follow-up question for each of the panelists, and then we'll start this way and work around the room. I'll reward those of you who got here early and got the front row seats as we'll take it by section. And Dr. Vickers, you have passed around, where are the photos, by the way? Are they making the way? Pretty close to the front.
I've got a bunch more up here, Commissioner, if they'd like to start on this end. Sure. I'd like to get them all back.
They're all numbered, you'll be frisked. Shawn, the agents outside the room here. Dr. Vickers, one of the issues in regard to the bodies that are discovered is the causation of death. And some in the national arena try to excuse away because there wasn't a gunfight every day that caused that, to indicate that it's problem's really not that bad. But you see it firsthand. These are your pictures. Tell us just a little.
I don't know how many of you probably have had over 600, probably close to 700 bodies show up within 30 minutes of your house since 2005. And the fact of the matter is we only find about 20% of them because these carcasses decompose real quick out there in the heat. The vultures, the caracaras, the wild hogs gobble them up. And most recently, within the past year or so, we've actually videoed some mountain lions that were following some of the groups. So we think some of the people that get weak may even be brought down by mountain lions. This issue has really put a strain on our county. It's actually broke our county. We've had a lot of real bad publicity over it. Currently, the medical examiner in Laredo is handling all the bodies for us, which is a big plus. I just talked to her this morning. Body count right now, I think it's around somewhere between 48 and 51. And you know, I can tell you this much, I think the DPS surge, the fact that we've got these aerostats brought in, which Chairman McCall had a lot to do with, has probably reduced our body count quite a bit. So anyway, I'll open this up for any questions, but it's pretty, there's no question these people are committing a crime coming into our country. Not only that, they're contributing to organized crime by paying huge sums of money to be brought in here, and they're left behind. And we've found women that were sexually assaulted. We find rape trees. We've found groups of women that have actually fled the group because they knew they were going to get sexually assaulted. They were lost. And in fact, a couple of years ago, we actually there were 3 women in carcasses found together, not far from our base station of operations. So we see the depravity of man out there. And there's a huge number of women that are being exploited. It's almost a given if it's an attractive young woman, she's going to be sexually assaulted out there on private property.
Thank you very much. Shawn, 2 questions for you from your perspective. The chart there to your immediate right reflects the Border Patrol strength and agents in New Mexico, Arizona, and California at about 14 border agents per border mile. Some say it's as much as 17. In Texas, we know we have about 7 border agents per border mile. And so, first part of the question is there any rational basis to have double the Border Patrol strength in these other states as compared to Texas? And then the second part is, I hear from agents quite frequently about the rules of engagement and the limitations that are placed on them, and it inhibits their effectiveness. So those 2 points.
The first one is, I don't speak for the agency. They unfortunately don't let me make decisions. So the staffing numbers, we have a saying that if it made sense, it wouldn't be the Border Patrol. And looking at those numbers, as someone that has been assaulted out there and come under attack from stones and all other manner of projectiles along the Tijuana border, there weren't 14 agents out there with me. And I was looking in both directions trying to see where my backup was, praying to God that they were going to get there before I had to shoot somebody. So you would probably have to take those numbers, divide them by 3, because I think that's looking at the total number that are assigned at each station. So you have 3 shifts at most stations, so divided by 3, it's even less. I don't know why Customs and Border Protection does that. I can guess that because of the way that we've had the traffic come across, we're not really accomplishing anything. We're not stopping illegal immigration with operations like Hold the Line or Operation Gatekeeper in Southern California. we're doing what's called displacement. We're squeezing the balloon in one area and it's exploding somewhere else. That's evidenced by the Rio Grande Valley. That was a very quiet sector prior to 2 years ago. And the cartels and the Central Americans saw that as the closest spot to Central America, and that's why they're coming through there, and the cartels are exploiting it to their business advantage. The rules of engagement, again, they don't let me use common sense and make decisions. Every type of effective operation that we've had, whether it's farm and ranch check, interior patrol, the most recent one, transportation check. We were going to airports, trolley stations, bus stations, train stations. As an agent, I've gotten on the San Diego trolley and the San Diego buses and filled up vehicles with illegal aliens that were using the transportation system. Of course, since it was effective, people complained because the ridership of the buses and trains in San Diego dropped by about 40%. So what we saw was that it's a tradition, so to speak, in the Border Patrol that if a special interest group cries loud enough and long enough, we stop doing it. So now from DC, we have a policy that unless we have specific actionable intelligence, and that's the exact phrase they use, we cannot go to transportation hubs, we cannot ride transportation carriers and make arrests. So every time we've been effective, we've been curtailed, and this is during both Democratic and Republican administrations. Both sides have their reason for us to look effective and look tough without actually being tough, and our agents are caught in the middle.
Okay, thank you very much. And Brendan, for you, and then we'll go right here on the front row here. You broke the story on the humanitarian crisis and made it a national issue. Been a tremendous amount of responsiveness from a lot of different directions since then. But we know these children are many traveling 1,700 miles when they could go to Costa Rica, they could go to southern Mexico, where the level of violence is not to the level or extent it is in northern Mexico, but they come to the United States. So from your involvement on this issue, can you reflect on the causation? Are there any trigger points in time that are actions at the federal level or comments by officials that may help be driving that?
Yeah, yes, sir. Everyone with a pen should write this down. The report I referenced earlier from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, it was actually called the 2012 report, but it was put out in 2013. You don't have that work, right? And it was on the Caribbean and Central America. And what they predicted in the report was that though it wasn't in the long-term interest of Mexican cartels, right, the cartels, to increase the levels of human trafficking, though it wasn't in the long-term interest, the networks the criminal networks that are making money there have been in existence long before, many of them long before our drug war, you know? And they're gonna be in existence long after our drug war. That's what, according to that report. And it said that as cocaine and marijuana profits decrease, they are seeing an increase in human trafficking. Now think about when that occurred, you know? Now second to that, people have to understand that when you talk about the Mexican cartels, this is something I hear a lot of left of center politicians say and a lot of left of center pundits say on television. And they say, well, it's not in the cartel's long-term interest, you know, to do something that would cause the border to shut down. Like whether it be help with a terrorist group or whether it be increase in the numbers intentionally of people who they encourage to come and promote coming. But you have to understand that when you say the cartels, it's the equivalent of saying, you know, the community in Texas. It's like, well, we have some differences between us, right? And in Mexico, when you look at something like the Sinaloa cartel, they still resemble the traditional long-term thinking for the most part, you know, maybe resembling an Italian mob or something, right? When you start heading east, though, and by the time you get to what's below us in Tamaulipas, the Gulf cartel does not resemble that at all. They resemble a bunch of gangbangers because their leadership has been decimated by law enforcement and by murder. So now you have plaza bosses fighting, you have everyone fighting each other. Most of the older people who are thinking about the long term are gone. Now you have a bunch of young people with great weaponry I wish I could have, right? And tanks, which I wish I could have too. And armored vehicles and what have you. So these people are thinking about the short term. So that's one thing to mention, is that it's all coming through. Maybe there are geographical reasons for that, but it's all coming through Tamaulipas, and it's all coming through the Gulf Cartel territory, the one cartel who doesn't have the institutional ability to care about tomorrow, right? That's something significant. There's also violence factors. People brought up violence. They said there's been an increase in violence. We released internal reports that were leaked to us, that were not classified, but that were law enforcement sensitive. And it said, no, the violence numbers have actually gone down in many of those host countries. And then the left media came back and said, yeah, but it's the type of violence. And it's like, well, I mean, how long are we going to fight on this, this narrative here? So here's what the data says. The data says that when they interviewed, it was a report, I believe, from EPIC, from the El Paso Intelligence Center, which is widely respected. They accumulate all the reports they can, all the information, all the data, and then they present their theories and the likelihoods of what's occurring. And they interviewed 230 of the unaccompanied minors, and the 219 said, yeah, it sucks where we live, but we came because of permisos. We came because we were told that we'd be allowed to stay. We also, that's what they said, people. Like, people would get mad at me, like, you're racist. I mean, no, I'm just saying what the data says, right? And the data also indicated that the child crisis we're going through, we're just talking about the unaccompanied minors now, that 42% or 47%, I don't remember exactly, were males between the age of 15 and 17, according to those males. We don't really know that they're 17. Of course, they're going to be in high school with our kids next year, but we don't know that they're really 17. They say they're 17. We also know that in 2013, 98 or 90, I think it was 98% of everyone who came illegally from a non-contiguous nation was allowed to stay in the U.S. Keep that in mind. 98% of the people who came from a non-contiguous, not Mexico or Canada, from Central America, were allowed, that were minors, sorry, were incomplete family units, were allowed to stay in the United States. In 2014, that has increased to 99.1%. 0.1% of people have been sent back who have come in 2014. 2% were sent back who came from 2013. Now, when you do things like that, if someone lives in a situation that is less favorable than here, what are they going to do? How many of you have kids? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. How many of you, if you lived in that hell, I wouldn't send my kid alone. I mean, I don't understand that. But how many of you, if you had kids and you lived in that abject poverty without any free market chances of getting out of it, which is a whole nother issue, how many of you wouldn't at least, you'd want to respect the laws of America, but you might consider coming too, right? I would if you put that carrot in front of me, and I have my little girl, and she was in that. So when we talk about the causes, I think that the data is pretty clear. All that together kind of gives a good indicator of what's occurring.
Good, thank you very much. Let's give them all a round of applause. Fantastic perspective that we're getting to hear right here. And let's start right here. I'm going to try to take like one question from each row and work around the room.
Okay, question, all of you might comment. When you come legally across the border, my experience has been that if you don't have the right papers or something, they actually don't let you cross the border. There's not like go 42 miles in and see if you like it and then come contact us. And in Ferguson, guys with guns stood in front of their stores and they weren't attacked under this recent war up in near St. Louis, because guys out in front had guns and were standing there. Why, as I understand from Mr. Vickers here, that the border station is, you're 67 miles inland, border station's 4 miles from your front door or something. I hear the border station's about 42 miles inland. How is somebody protecting the border when they're 42 miles away and can't see the border?
Well, quite frankly, most of the Border Patrol checkpoints are one in the first county up from the border.
Why?
The reason our border patrol checkpoint is in the second county up, and we've got the same situation west of us in Jim Hall County and also east of us in Kennedy County, is because the Rio Grande Valley has a huge network of farm-to-market roads and that parallel the river and then go north. So what they're trying to do is to move up further north so that they can cover the major highways where all of these farm-to-market roads intersect. So it's a strategic move so that they can be able to check all the vehicles that are headed north by covering all these farm-to-market roads and this network and spiderweb farm-to-market roads south of that checkpoint. And that's why that's the case.
Is that what they do at the legal border crossing too? They say.
They apprehend a lot of
You get
people.
off of the farm to market road?
Well, they apprehend a lot of people coming through that checkpoint illegally. But they apprehend a hell of a
But do
lot
they tell
more
them to
that
come
are
on
coming
in?
around the checkpoint through our private property.
They tell them
But-
to come on in, experience America, cost all this money to deal with you?
Well, you know, from what Brandon Darby just said, it looks like that may be the case. I'll pass this on.
Under the strategic plan, the National Border Patrol Strategy, it's called Defense in Depth. Obviously, we don't catch everything at the border, and I understand people don't like Border Patrol checkpoints, and we've had a lot of problems with them. But they are part of the overall strategic goal. And as I said, we don't catch everything, and so we try to intercept illegal aliens and drugs that are coming from the border to their final destination, whether that be Houston, Phoenix, Los Angeles. In most cases, the illegal aliens that cross are not going to stay in the immediate border area. They're going to go somewhere where there's more job opportunities, and so we try to catch them there. If we could catch everything at the border, we wouldn't need the checkpoints, but
Amen.
that doesn't happen. And I know we get a lot of questions at the checkpoints where people say, you know, it says Border Patrol, why aren't you at the border? Well, our credentials and under the Immigration and Naturalization Act, we are federal agents. We are not within 25 miles of the border federal agents. We have jurisdiction throughout the United States under Section 235 of the INA. We also have arrest authority within 100 miles of the border under Section 287. So our agents could be in New York City, they could be in Kansas City, they could be in Los Angeles. They have the authority to make arrests. And if we see illegal aliens, I don't care what country you're from, we will arrest you. We'll probably get in trouble for it if we do it in those cities, but we would love to do
99% of you
it.
will stay here permanently.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It-
got a bad
it's-
policy. Let's
it's-
get some-
I agree with you, it's a
We have
bad
a bad
policy,
policy.
but I don't make policy.
Let's get something clear though. When we talk about the Border Patrol agents and then the agency, and then we talk about ICE and we talk about the administration, we're not talking about the same things, right? So the Border Patrol agents don't allow people to go, and they don't make that determination, and that's one of the frustrations they're having, is that they're doing their job, they're oftentimes risking their lives to do their job, and then they arrest people and go through everything, and then days later, the people are let go with a notice to appear for them. It was very frustrating recently. How many of you heard about the TSA scandal? TSA?
Yeah.
Okay, check this out. The Border Patrol agents in Laredo went to the union and said, hey, we need you to speak out. The TSA is allowing these illegal aliens to fly, with a notice to appear for them, which is a piece of paper that's largely based on the words, the information that comes from the illegal alien who we do not know who they are, right? And the TSA, we reported, the TSA came out and said we were lying. They mocked me on Twitter. The spokesman mocked me with like 15 tweets. He tweeted at me. And it turns out it was true. It was true. He had to admit it was true, and they haven't apologized yet. But see, that's not the agent's fault. Like imagine that's not the agent's fault at that border checkpoint. It's not the agent's fault on the border. It's the agency's fault and the agency's politically appointed leadership.
Thank you. We'll go right here. Strategically, we know, and Shawn pointed out, that 7 Border Patrol agents are for 24 hours a day. Vacation, sick days, all those kind of things. We know where people are coming in. They're coming in unlawfully at the border, take everything we have, put it on the border, and that's where the first step in solving the problem. But the ones that we have, the agents are doing a fabulous job. The ones I've encountered with the resources they have, we'll go right here and then back down there.
Can you give us some insight into this permisso? You know, what you're saying, this notice to appear, which, I mean, the news reports I saw that they weren't even trying to evade the Border Patrol. In fact, they wanted the Border Patrol to take them in, and they'd get food and shelter and everything else, because they knew they were going to get this notice to appear, which basically is a permisso. And so that's where this flood has come from, is because the word has got out that the Border Patrol, I mean, you can be standing there watching them come across the river, and you can't do anything but take them into custody, which is what they want, and then they get this permisso, and they're free to go in the country for the next several years.
They're called greeters.
Let me clarify something. Some people who come want to be caught by Border Patrol. They're turning themselves in. The majority of people crossing our river illegally and our border do not want to be caught. So the media is presenting that everyone coming across is turning themselves in. That is not true. The people turning themselves in represent a percentage, not a vast percentage of the people actually coming in illegally. The problem is that if Shawn Moran is on the border and a kid comes up to Shawn Moran with a mother with a child and says, here I am, Shawn has to then go take care of that woman and child, and then that section of the border is left wide open. That is the problem that we're having. So when we say like the numbers are down, it's like, well, how the hell do you know the numbers are down? Nobody's there, right?
What's this law that gives them, allows them to have a hearing and notice to appear and all that stuff?
The notice to appear is the way we have to process them. Because family groups are considered low priorities, they're being released. The juveniles are being released on, to a family member here in the U.S. Our agents don't, I don't have that answer. Again, I don't make policy. I'm on the same side as you, sir, where I disagree with what's going on. I'm just explaining why. I don't know why it's happening, but I can explain what is happening, and I can tell you how the cartels are using this to their advantage. In the Rio Grande Valley, approximately 40% of our agents are inside doing processing because of the vast numbers that we're encountering. So just over half of our agents are out in the field. That's a problem in and of itself. They are then tied up because the cartels they control the smuggling routes. They are the landlords. They rent out the routes to human smugglers. And now that we're seeing all these juveniles and family groups coming up, they are focusing it at the bridges, at the historical crossing points, and making sure that these groups are crossing them. These people could go to a port of entry and present themselves, request asylum, and they would be able to do that. There's a legal process for doing that. But the cartels see an opportunity. They're making sure that the 60% of us that are out there are now tied up, and then what they are doing is they are taking their drugs, they are taking their special interest aliens, people from countries that have state-sponsored terrorism, really bad places that we don't want them coming into this country. They are then going way far away from where they're focusing these unaccompanied juveniles and family groups, and that's where they're going across. We used to see drugs in those areas. We don't see that in the numbers that we used to see right now. In the Rio Grande Valley, it is on the outskirts. They are making sure that our attention is focused on the numbers. And unfortunately, we're occupied, and our surveillance assets are showing that there are still people that are trying to evade us. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their intentions are. And unless we're able to get an agent out there to catch them, they're going to get into this country.
I wanted to comment on what Brandon said. All the children and all the families are not giving up. And to substantiate that, during June, just there at that Falfurrias Brooks County checkpoint, the Border Patrol apprehended over 4,000 people, 82% other than Mexican, from various countries, including Central America, over 400 children. And a lot of these people, whenever they get to the border on the other side and they hire a cartel to bring them into the country illegally, take them to Houston. At that point, they lose their option when to cross, where to cross, and where to end up. So it's not their choice. And so a lot of these cartel guys and the coyotes affiliated with them, we have the Pistoleros who are affiliated with the Gulf Cartel. We see all kinds of gang members out there. They bring them as far as they can with the intention of trying to get them to Houston. A lot of that is because they have extortion money waiting for them in Houston when they show up.
Mike, we're going to work our way down this way.
You know, it's almost a waste of time dealing with the federal government because of the policy issues, and everybody knows what's going on in Washington. Nobody decides on anything. But I applaud the Texas legislature. They're starting to do things, and Perry started to do some things, some very good things. And one of the things, like for instance, our representative, Jan Lozano, is proposing having extremely harsh penalties for any coyote that's captured transmitting on our side of the border. In other words, to talk about a life imprisonment. I think that sort of thing is wonderful, and I think that we need to have more of that sort of thing. I think we need to have a crackdown on corruption, particularly around the border, and the Texas government justice needs to get out there and do more of that, so not just the feds. And I think the feds have done a great job recently. But now, Todd, since you're about to become unemployed, and you're a great man, okay, why don't you consider heading up a commission for proposed legislation for the next legislative session so we can get something passed in Texas and take a bite out of this crime?
Well, I think there are a lot of good folks with some great ideas, and might get you to comment on the proposal about Texas taking tougher actions. Would that be a deterrent, increasing the penalties here in Texas on coyotes? Do you think that would have a measurable impact on stemming the tide, or where do we stand on something like that?
I think that's a great idea. Our experience has been, and I'll use the experience in Southern California, our agents get assaulted nationwide almost every day. I couldn't even give you an exact number of how many Border Patrol agents will be assaulted today, whether that's a suspect that is striking the agent with his fists, or shooting at an agent, or throwing projectiles at an agent. That's the most common. When an agent gets injured, we call the FBI, and the duty agent will call the assistant U.S. attorney. And I can't remember the last time that we had a federal prosecution for what it is 18 U.S.C. 111, which is assault on a federal officer. They have told us that an agent has to be in the hospital, basically on his deathbed, before they will charge that. The way that we have found a way around that is through the states. The threshold for prosecution for smuggling or any border-related crime is so high. You have to have multiple drug convictions, violent crimes, before the U.S. attorney will do any type of substantial charge against you. The two, I think illegal aliens, even too nice a term for the two guys that killed Agent Vega here in Texas. One was deported 4 times. 3 times he was fined $10, and the 4th time he was fined $100. So I guess the life of a Border Patrol agent is worth about $130. So what we have found in states like Texas, Arizona, California, that the states, the district attorneys are the ones that have really pushed the envelope to get substantial jail time, prison time for those that assault Border Patrol agents and those that commit crimes along the border. So our union would be in favor of that, and we would applaud any effort to give more jail time and substantial penalties to those that come after our people.
When Robert Rosas, the agent I talked about, seen his memorial, when he was killed, the guy who was one of the older guys, one of the apparent leaders of that effort, the 5 to kill him, one of them was on supervised release. And do you know what he was on supervised release for? He was caught being a coyote, and they put him out on supervised release. He went back to Mexico, and he came back and killed a Border Patrol agent. You know, I'm not a, how many of you are aware of, like Dr. Vickers brought up rape treaties. How many of you have never heard that term before? That's what I thought. Like that's profound. Like, I hope Dr. Vickers would actually tell you a little about that, like what some of the coyotes do. to the women. You know, like women from Central America. How many of you realize that most of them coming from Central America get put up, their parents put them on birth control or give them morning after pills? You know that? And they come and they get, when they cross the Sukiati River, is that right? They cross and they go to a stash house, and usually if they're deemed attractive, they get sexually assaulted. Then they're taken to northern Mexico, where they're put in another stash house, in the Reynosa, and they're usually sexually assaulted. Then they're smuggled across and brought to another stash house, where a lot of times they're sexually assaulted. And then they're brought to just south of Falfurrias, let out, walking, and then that coyote oftentimes will sexually assault them again. So they have an expectation of rape to do that. And as Dr. Vickers brought up, and I'm glad he did, a lot of the times they'll find trees with an article of a female's clothing secured to it. And that's because it's somehow considered, I guess it's some kind of trophy for the coyote that he raped a girl under that tree. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the coyotes, clearly. I would be in favor of harsher penalties for that, for sure.
Do you have a response, Todd?
Look, Dr. Vickers, absolutely, I concur.
I'd like to comment, before I talk about the rape trees, about the penalties. In South Texas, when they catch a coyote with 5 people or less, they let them go. And a lot of times they're not prosecuted until they catch them the 10th or 15th time. Also, just here recently, within the past few weeks, we had an individual that had 6 voluntary returns. This is like a slap on the hand. It's not a real deportation. And usually after the 5th or 6th voluntary return, they get a penalty. And I think on the 5th one, this guy got 60 days in jail. On the 6th one, he got 8 months in federal pen. Well, he was fixing to have a 7th one. And he came at 2 of my employees with a club, threatened to kill them. One of them had to pull a rifle out and back him off. And then he gets over there under a tree, has a spray repellent and a lighter, and piles up a bunch of grass, and he says, I'm gonna burn your friggin' ranch down. That's not exactly the word, but I'm gonna burn your ranch down. He started a fire. Well, the boys had called my wife. She's got some dogs that'll put them in a tree just like a dog under a coon. And that's what she did. She showed up, and this guy was issuing terroristic threats. The dogs put him in a tree and held him there until the Border Patrol came to pick him up. I tried to get state charges filed on him. And I'm going to tell you, it almost takes an act of Congress in South Texas to get that done. Number one, they were going to have to put him in the county jail, spend money on him, probably take him to trial. I mean, all these different issues play in before the law is enforced. This is something that I'm trying to get ranchers to do. I mean, we're trying to file state charges on this guy. In addition, ICE picked him up, took him to Corpus Christi. But this is a huge problem. These people are turned back over and over and over again. And during our June-op, we caught some gang members, and one of them had a stiletto on him, and I've got pictures of that. Don't have them with me or in my cell phone. That's a killing knife. And this guy had 2 voluntary returns and 2 drug charges, and here he was back again carrying a weapon on my property. The state did not do anything about it. So back to the rape trees, we find them frequently. Like Brandon said, it's a macho thing, a coyote claiming a conquest. It's usually undergarments of the woman, bras, panties, so forth. And we have found 2 or 3 of them where there's been a definite indication of a struggle, blood all over the place, and the body was drug out to the highway and loaded up and dumped somewhere else. So it's something we live with.
I've been given the sign that our time is getting very short here today. And I want to be certain that each of the panelists has a couple of minutes to, I want to make certain that Dr. Vickers has 30 seconds to close. And that everybody else has the equivalent 2 minutes of his 30 seconds.
I just have a question. Does somebody have that Urdu dictionary around here? Is it floating around, or is it?
Yeah. Right.
Oh, good. Okay.
We're going to do a purse check before we leave now. There's no ma'am, you there, you've been very patient. I know many of you had your hands up. This is probably, our timeline is going to be close to the end. So if you would ask your question, and then we'll get the panelists to address that, and then we'll start.
I appreciate everyone's suggestions. I wonder if anyone has any cost estimates on what you expect would be needed to actually accomplish the strengthening of the border and shorten times for individuals who are going through the immigration system in order to not be released on the MTAs. So any sort of cost estimates on what are needed in order to effectively get to your solutions.
The question was, are there any cost estimates in regard to having the resources necessary to secure the border, I think
Yes,
was it. And very important question, one that our nation needs to be thinking about. Obviously, Texans are thinking about that with the dollars that we're spending. Shawn, have you heard any estimates or calculations?
I have part of the numbers. Under the beginning of sequestration, it would have cost $120 million to have full Border Patrol staffing. And I think we're seeing several billion that is being put towards this the surge in South Texas now. I have not seen any figures as to what goes to actual border enforcement. It seems to all be on the back end in terms of immigration judges, processing centers, and detention facilities, and then also government contracts for people that are going to take care of unaccompanied juveniles. I don't know what it would cost in terms of dollars. I do know that it would cost a lot in political will to actually go after the people that need to. And our union has always said what we think is the #1 solution to helping solve the border is going after the employers that are hiring illegal aliens. Now that's going to include people, I think that's going to include corporations. It's going to include people who are hiring nannies and maids. But if you have prosecutions of some very high-profile cases, and illegal aliens know that they cannot come to this country and work without being here legally, they will not come, and then the Border Patrol can operate more effectively and keep out the people who are still going to cross that border, because then we know they are up to sinister acts, and we can focus our resources on stopping those people.
I want to address it really quickly. You know, people ask me all the time about what are the metrics for a secured border. I guess I can move my chair over. What are the metrics? And I always tell people, you know, I don't know the exact cost, but I can tell you that it's much more than just Border Patrol and just a fence and just sensors. One of the things we look at, like we're frustrated when we hear about the U.S. Attorney's Office not prosecuting people who attack agents. Well, part of that is because of the way that the U.S. Attorney's Office assigns resources. If you put 4 agents to work on a large metropolitan area on the border, if you have 4 assistant U.S. attorneys, you're not going to be able to prosecute as much as you should be able to prosecute. And so border security is really, it involves more agents. It involves their pay reform, I think, and allowing the agents to actually be out there working the hours they need to work. It involves the U.S. Attorney's Office reassigning resources. You know, it involves the FBI reassigning some resources and dealing more with public corruption on the border. And we can go down the line. You know, it's a holistic approach that needs to be taken, not just these piecemeals that we're doing.
We're going to do a rapid close. Dr. Vickers, we want you to start us out here.
Can I give 30 seconds to that question about the price?
A real 30 seconds?
A real 30 seconds. We work real close with the Border Patrol, and I just visited with our head agent the other day. It costs $78,000 to uproot a Border Patrol agent from Arizona to move him to South Texas. That's moving his family the whole 9 yards. So one of the things that we're experiencing, aside from what I've just mentioned, if somebody pulls up to that checkpoint with 499 pounds of marijuana in his car, he gets to walk, because the federal prosecutors down there will not prosecute them if they have 500 pounds or less. And I mean, this got to be fixed. I mean, it's a lucrative crime, organized crime in Brooks County, Texas, for that very reason. We need more prosecutors.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Shawn. You want to take a minute and do a wrap up?
I just want to say thank you again for having me here. It's been an honor to speak with you today. And Brandon alluded to our pay reform. I didn't really bring it up today, but our agents have proposed legislation through Senators Tester and McCain on the Senate side, and Representative Jason Chaffetz from Utah. And on the Senate side, it's Senate 1691, and I believe it's 340, 352 on the House side, but don't quote me on that one. And what that does is get Border Patrol staffing back to 100%. I alluded earlier, we have a very convoluted pay system. Our agents would be giving up $6,000 to $7,000 a year, but we would have pay stability, and more importantly, we would have full staffing on the border to back up our agents and get as many of our people out there as possible. Hopefully improve that number of 7 agents per mile in Texas. It's the most important thing we see right now. Nobody wants to take a pay cut, but with the Congress we have and the fiscal environment that we're operating in, we have no other choice. We will not play politics with border security. We won't sit, we can't strike, so that's out. But it's very important. We don't want somebody that is sitting in Washington who could get a bonus for budgetary savings deciding what a Border Patrol agent in Laredo, Texas should be doing. And at the busiest times of the day, the shift changes 3 times a day, that is when our manpower is curtailed. And the cartels know it, they take advantage of it, and it puts every single American at risk, and we're trying to stop that. So if you can contact your legislators, both at the state level and the federal level, and tell them you want full Border Patrol staffing out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Wrap up as well.
So I'd like to.
Thank you.
I'll try to take a minute. I'll do that. Again, it is an honor to sit here today with the people I've been on this panel with, and I appreciate that everyone came out. I think an open border is inhumane under the current circumstances that exist south of our border, and now north of our border with what occurs. I think it's inhumane. I think the humanitarian approach is to make sure that there is security on that border. At this point, especially with the number of unaccompanied minors who come across and females, and now knowing what we know about women getting raped, how anyone can think that the status quo is okay is they're either extremely ignorant or they're very dishonest, and they should be ashamed of themselves. You know, the humanitarian approach is to make sure that we have a secure border. That's all.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could attend 100 forums on border security, and you would not find more informed individuals in our nation. Let's thank them once again for that. Neither one of these guys are asking for your vote for anything either. They're here because of their passion for the issue, and we certainly appreciate you so very much. All of you here are big investors in Texas. You understand the strength of our economy. You understand we're a dynamic state. We're attracting jobs from across the nation. We have a powerful leadership role to play. And Texans do need to step forward. They do need to be talking about the issues. This is a national security breach. Texas just happens to be on the front lines. So that's why the Texas Public Policy Foundation set up today talking about what's happening on the border. Next Thursday, September 4th, in this very room, it will be the second part, Securing the Border, a symposium on solutions. I think there's a few spots left. If you haven't signed up, be talking about the border solutions and to follow up what we did today. I appreciate the Texas Public Policy Foundation for being the leader, the thought leader that they are in our state tackling these issues, and I thank you for your leadership in being here today. Have a great rest of the weekend. Go Aggies.